Hey, good Sunday afternoon, everyone. I am going to tag a few people here, as usual, a little bit later than I wanted to get started. It is a beautiful October day in Tennessee. I mean, beautiful. It was a little chilly yesterday, and I thought, oh no, winter has come already. But sure enough, we have that wonderful, sunny, 68-degree weather. Slight breeze today. It's just awesome. This is what Tennessee's about. Took a little walk this morning, trying to get away this weekend and just try to get enough rest so my mind can regroup and without a bunch of grandkids and without a bunch of other things on my mind. Fortunately, I'm not under a huge briefing schedule right now, although there's always one looming somewhere with me. So it's given me a little bit of a break. So I just want to talk about a couple things, and particularly talk to you a little bit about my experience this week in a medical kidnapping issue. We don't have Terry writing for as much anymore, and I really kind of miss that because she was able to pick up on these stories and really sit down and write it, go through all the medical records, but then write a story that was very understandable. And I would often send people to her, and she did a great job. So just if you're out there, Terry, listening, we really miss you doing that. I know you've had a lot of things going on in your life too. So, all right, I've invited a few people. And so I'm going to go ahead and jump right into the issue that I dealt with this week with medical kidnapping. I am not going to name names or talk about any particular disease, but I did have a case this week under an emergency situation which dealt with a child who was put into Vanderbilt on an emergency basis. And she was in a very unstable condition. So before the week was over, by the end of the week, although she appeared to be stabilizing, the medical personnel kind of turned against the family, and it was, they really didn't know. I mean, this is a family who really went into a hospital. They knew nothing about CPS. They knew nothing about the child welfare system. They knew nothing about Vanderbilt's ties to DCS. They knew nothing about hospital social workers. They knew nothing about doctors calling in medical neglect, especially doctors who have a conflict of interest because they are working for a hospital that has several contracts with DCS. They knew nothing about that. And so they were quite shocked when it appeared that the hospital personnel, including the medical staff, became rather hostile. So they ended up, fortunately, got a hold of another attorney, and then that attorney reached out to me and started trying to dig into it. Well, they did not. They told the family on Saturday that the child was in state's custody and they no longer had any medical decision making on Saturday. There was no petition filed. There was no court order. They just said it. And then they did not file a petition until Tuesday. I believe it was Tuesday. And in the original petition, because they had already made a statement that they had the child in custody, they also got an ex parte order from the judge and didn't set it until Friday. And this ex parte order, now, again, I think everybody here understands what an ex parte order is, but I'm just going to say it again. It's basically on an affidavit of a DCS worker, which is generally a hearsay. It's not based on any personal knowledge, that they take the information from somebody else and then they put it in a petition, and then the social worker signs it as if they have personal knowledge, and of course they don't. And in this particular case, I mean, it is really intended, even under the worst case scenarios, to be a short-term, they should have contacted any attorney. Yeah, they didn't know. Parents don't know when they get into this situation. So with that ex parte order, they were able to remove medical decision-making, which is unbelievable. I mean, really, the true intent, if there was ever any goodwill about an ex parte order, it was to get a child out of a life-threatening situation and just keep them safe and stable until there could be a full evidentiary hearing on it. So that didn't happen. And so on Tuesday, they served a petition. They had already been in contact with one of the parents, another attorney that was representing the parents. They knew the parents had an attorney. Instead of asking for a meeting so it could be discussed, they just went and got the ex parte order. And again, most of you who are watching this understand either this has happened to you already, or you know somebody that it's happened to, or you've heard about it, if nothing else. But, you know, I do post these videos after we've done lives. I do post them on my YouTube channel, and I'm trying to get the word out more and more to people about what the courts are doing to family rights. So they file it on Tuesday with an ex parte order, even though they had an attorney. They did not serve the parents, and I mean only got the petition because I personally called the clerk and convinced the clerk to send it to me. And so they had it set for Friday. And then on Wednesday, they file a motion to conduct certain medical procedures and set it for Thursday. So we had no notice. We didn't even have the complete medical record. All they sent us was 78 pages of labs. So, so here we are, and the parents, and then to top it all off, the family was from out of state. They were only in Tennessee temporarily to visit somebody. And this happened, right? So they're not at home. The family ends up getting separated. And here you have a child who's in a critical condition. And I'm just going to tell you, Vanderbilt Children's Hospital specialists have the bedside manner of a pit bull who hasn't eaten for 3 days. I mean, they were horrible to these people. They sent the security guard in and told them that if they tried to remove their child, it would be kidnapping, and they would go to prison straight from the hospital. That's how outrageous it is. This was a family that was a typical, I don't want to say typical because they're not typical, but this was a family that certainly had many characteristics of being a vulnerable family. They had lots of children. They homeschooled. They did a lot of homeopathic medicines. They weren't in the, I guess you would call it the collective rat race, right? And so they had never, ever even heard of anything like this before. So they were extremely vulnerable. And here the doctors really are just turn on them and get hostile with them. So, and on a court hearing, they put a doctor on the telephone from Vanderbilt who, is basically telling the court that, it's a life-threatening situation, and the parents they literally have no defense. And, and I even told the court, we don't even have the medical records. I can't even cross-examine this doctor about what's in the medical records. So we had a hearing. The court gave us another day, told us to come back the next day at 2 o'clock. And then on Friday, they were going to give us time to try to reach out, get some additional information. But instead, on Friday morning at 9 o'clock, DCS called a meeting, kept us on a phone meeting for an hour and a half, which we were not released from until 10:30, and then sent me 604 pages of medical records at 11:59 p.m. 11:59 a.m. And we had a hearing set for 2, which I would have had to leave at least an hour before that. So basically, I had 1 hour to print and put into a notebook and flip through and start reading 604 pages of medical records. Well, here's one thing that I found out from the medical records, and that is, and this is what drives me so crazy, is that they have secret meetings. Oh, hello, does that sound familiar? They have secret meetings without the parents, with multiple medical personnel, social worker, DCS, to talk about the child. And they don't even include the parent in that conversation. So, if they would inform the parent that, look, we are going to have a serious meeting about the child. I understand your rights may be at issue here. And if you want an attorney present, and we'll give you, unfortunately we can't give you 3 or 4 days, but we'll give you 3 or 4 hours to have an attorney present while we have these discussions about your child behind your back, about the seriousness and what we think needs to be done in spite of what you say. So it is... and I was really appalled by that when I finally got the records and I saw that. And I saw that was the most appalling thing to me. And this is not the first time I've seen this kind of thing in Vanderbilt records. And, and this is just my call out. You would think to Vanderbilt Children's Hospital, you would think from a medical ethics perspective that if they were going to have a staff of medical personnel and a social worker and DCS have a meeting about someone's child, that they would tell the parents and allow the parents to sit down, listen to it, have an advocate or have an attorney present. Yeah, that's exactly right. They do whatever they want behind your back. So it was very disturbing, and I don't know if y'all remember, and if somebody remembers the name of this child in Boston, you can give it to me. But there was a child in Boston about, 10 years ago now that had mitochondria disease, and they basically took the parents away from her and kept her in a hospital for almost a year. What was that child's name? Somebody knows what I'm talking about. I've read that story so many times. If Terry LaPointe was on here, she'd remember that. As a matter of fact, she said that was one of the first stories. That really was the first story that kind of perked her ears up about medical kidnap. But, oh yeah, Jeff, we're going to talk about that as well here in a minute. But, I could just see this case turning into round 2, deja vu, of the Pelletier, that's it, the Jessica Pelletier case in Boston. Remember that story? If any of you have been around for a while, you remember that case ended up being on national news. And the parents had taken the child across state lines to another hospital, or had ended up at a hospital across state lines for some reason, and then they wouldn't let the child out of the hospital. And they literally kept her for almost a year and cut her family. And I could just see that was going to happen. That's how this was going to go down. They were going to hold this child in the hospital. They were going to force her to do the treatments that the family was against. They were going to cut the family off. They were going to classify her as like a level 4 or 5. And they were going to order the parents to pay child support. I mean, I could just unroll that. And so since this family, and I spent my time talking to the father, because he was the one who was available to me. But, for this family, I told him, I'm like, this is how this unfolds. This is what happens here. So I'm going to touch my thing up here. Wait a minute, I don't like my lighting, so just hold on for me here. Oh, a little bit better. All right, so that's the way I could see that this was going to unfold. And so I had a serious talk to him, and I'm like, here's... Justina Pelletier. That's right, Michelle. Yeah, this was going to turn into another do-over of the Justina Pelletier case. And a sweet girl, a sweet, very sweet, beautiful girl who, when you talk to her, she seemed to be okay. So I had a serious talk about what we do to try to get interim relief and keep their child from disappearing into the vapor, because you all know they disappear them and bring charges on the family too. Yeah. And we had a DCS meeting on Friday morning, and we basically turned it around on DCS, and we said, okay, so because DCS said we don't know how to make medical decisions, so if the child's in state's custody, we have to turn all that medical decision making over to Vanderbilt. And we're like, so if something goes wrong, who's liable? If you're not the medical decision maker and Vanderbilt is, and they're making all the decisions without any scrutiny at all, who's going to be the person liable when something goes wrong? That really just kind of shut them up. So it is, this is welcome to my world. This is my life, right? And I started Monday morning, and I think things are going to be, I think I have things in order, and I know what's going to happen. And then by the end of the week, I've spent 14 hours trying to keep the worst thing from happening, which is basically what I do a lot of the time. It is total triage. But I think we're going to be okay. But you know what? This family, I think ultimately they're going to be big warriors, because I had to pick him up and take him to court and drive him there because he didn't have a car, and picked him up at the hospital. And the dad was like, this just doesn't seem right. There's just something here that doesn't smell right. And I'm like, you're right. And then I showed him, I pulled up on Transparent Tennessee. I used to say that Vanderbilt gets $2.5 million a year from the Department of Children's Services, and that was back in 2012, 13, and 14. So I pulled up the most recent one, the 2018-19 fiscal year, $4.5 million. So Vanderbilt gets $4.5 million. They are the referral. They're the medical referral. They get to be the expert. They get to do the medical decisions, and they get to do the procedures. And not only that, I found out from the medical records that on the admission of the child, even though the family had private insurance, they immediately put her on TennCare. Yep. So I think there's probably some TennCare fraud going on too with DCS. So, which, then is tied with child's in DCS custody. It's immediately tied to Medicaid. So I told him all about Title IV funding. I told him all about private contractors. I told him about my trips to DC. I told him about my YouTube and our Family Forward project, of course. So we are, so that's how the bulk of my week went. So I wanted to share that with you. A couple other things that just a couple of goings on. So I made these for Washington. We made these little flyer things for Washington. I think they're backwards for you when I do it on live. So you'll have to, it doesn't have very many words on it. And then it has a little script on the back, and I'm going to tell you what it says on the back. It says, defund the Adoption and Safe Families Act of 1997. It says, Congress passed the Family First Prevention and Services Act in February 2018, and the states refused to implement the services prior to removal provision and other efforts to rebuild and support families. President Trump passed an executive order on June 24, 2020, in support of Families First. ASFA puts a bonus check on every child's head to remove that child from its family of origin and adopt them into the homes of strangers. Defund ASFA and support the Families First Act. And then it says, force the state to comply, cut funding. And it's got my picture standing in front of the Supreme Court with my poster. So these are a soft enough paper that it can kind of be folded up into about 3 sizes here. So it's like this. So you can hand it to somebody, and it says defund ASFA, and then they can open it up and look at it, and it has the Family Forward Project and a little logo there. So I got these through Vista. I have had a couple people who wanted some, so there is a cost for it. So if you are thinking for any of your rallies or anything that you want some of those, it's something that we can certainly order some more of. Yes, exactly, Allison. Yep, they take children who have insurance and put them on TennCare, and then put them under all the DCS mandated therapies and therapists, etc. So that is going on. I wanted to show you just quickly a couple things. A lot of people want to sometimes know about good resources to get a little bit more conversant. There is a thing called the Congressional Research Service. Do you see that? And this is the child welfare funding for fiscal year 2018, which would be, it starts in July 1st, so it would be 18-19. And this dude here, I think this is probably a male, Emil Stoltzfus. He has written these reports for probably at least the last 10 years, so he's pretty good at understanding it and putting it together. It's not a very interesting read. It's a pretty boring read, but it does help you understand some of the language, some of the funding language a little bit better. So he talks about promoting safe and stable families. He talks about CAPTA. He talks about legal guardianship. So fortunately, this one's not very long. Sometimes they're much longer. And then there's also just a little summary of that. So here's a little 2-page summary of kind of the same thing, just so you can get an idea and be able to talk conversant about where the money is going. So And, we talk about it being $9 billion, and, there's the number right there. That's just the federal government, and it's a matching number, so it is $18 billion just in the foster care, all right? Also, I found something, we got a lot of things going on right now. The election is a month from yesterday. What is today? Is today the 3rd or the 4th? 2nd, 3rd, 4th. Today's the 4th, so in 30 days will be, I guess, the zero-sum game. If we get a result then, and I know in Family Forward Project, we have people who are very loyal on each end of the spectrum. And it is not the place, Family Forward Project is not the place to really bash either side, because truly, truly, child welfare is a bipartisan it's a bipartisan condition. It's a bipartisan problem. I mean, it was the Democrats who passed the Mondale Act and who passed the Adoption with Safe Families Act. Those are the ones who were in power, and even the captive reauthorization, those are the Democrats. But then the Republicans haven't really done anything amazing either. And Trump did sign the executive order, and, I'm very happy about that. And I keep looking at that executive order saying this is Trump's mandate to his agency, which is the Department of Health and Human Services. So we are, I know some people were thinking about trying to do some type of a forum or something before the election. I know Debbie talked about doing that in Michigan. I think that because the election can mean a lot of things in a lot of different ways, and not just the presidential election, but there are a lot of other seats that are up, Senate seats, congressional seats, etc. A lot of things going on in several states. So I think we're kind of in a holding pattern. I don't really have another trip planned to D.C. until after the election. I have had lots of thoughts. I mean, I am still thinking that there's got to be another way for me to use the talents and the knowledge and the just the perseverance that I have to affect this system. So I think it's more than, although I go into a case and I try to get it on track and try to get kids home, and sometimes I call parents out, and some parents may feel like I give you a little bit of a hard time, but I know what the system looks like. And when you're going out to slay dragons, and they're dragons, you don't take squirt guns, right? So when you're going to slay a dragon, you need to make sure that you are very well equipped with the right tools, the right voice, the right equipment, the right task behind you. I mean, even the right thoughts, right? You have to have the right thoughts in your head when you go into this. So, and I really want to look at a way to spread my ability to make that connection between the families, the legislature, and the executive branch. So, I mean, I've been fighting this battle through the judicial branch for, 20 years. And, I'd have some success, but it's slow poking kicking over one stone at a time. So I've got to be able to look at my next phase of what I do in a different perspective. I've met so many great people through Family Forward, and the other thing is so many of you want to do something, but you're just not sure what it is and how to do it, and I'm keeping all of that in mind. So it's going to, I'm actively making changes, going to be looking at different ways of doing things over the next 10 to 12 months, and it's gonna happen. So I just want you all to just I see lots of new people coming on, lots of stories. If you are in the middle of this, God bless you. It's so horrid, it's so damaging to your family. There's just no other way to put it. So try to, if you can get somebody to talk to you who's been in the group for a while and know some of the things that you need to do. I get lots of people reach out to me. I mean, hundreds of people reach out to me. I do work during the day. I'm a full-time practicing attorney. So any individual case that I look at has to go through my office. So it's just makes it a little bit harder for me to do things. Sometimes I'll ask you some questions or look at it, but it's just, it's my job. It's my job. So that's the way I have to do it for now. So anyway, I want you all to have a good day. I hope you're having such beautiful weather as I'm having here in Tennessee on this beautiful October 4th, 2020 day. And please stay in touch. Please keep posting stories. So many things are happening. People are getting arrested. There are certain things coming out with the courts, with the judiciary. So please keep posting. If new people post their stories, please be compassionate, but give them directions and encouragement. And just please continue to pray that we be blessed in what we do and that our enemies be destroyed, because that's what I pray for every day, that the enemies be torn down and silenced and shackled and destroyed. So, okay, I love y'all. I'm going to take off. I've had a nice couple days in the country, and it's time for me to get back to the drill in the city. So, we'll talk to you soon. Thanks. Bye-bye.